flowers arrived during the budget meeting. White orchids. Expensive. The kind of arrangement that made my program director stop mid-sentence and stare past me at Sarah standing in the doorway. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, breathless, "but there's a card. I didn't need to read it." The name on the envelope was enough. Obaquame Okonkwo. His office must have coordinated it somehow. My hands went cold. The room tilted, not much, just enough that I had to grip the table edge. 8 years. 8 years of not letting that name near my thoughts. And now Sarah was saying it like it was just another piece of office business. Alexandra, my program director, was watching me. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just give me a minute." She left. Sarah left. I locked the door and stood there in my 42nd floor office in Tribeca, staring at flowers I couldn't afford to feel anything about, and my phone buzzed. An email. "My name is Chisom Okonkwo. My father is dying. He's asked me to find you. Please call me. Dying, not sick, not struggling. Dying." My chest cracked open like I'd been punched. I deleted the email. Then I undeleted it. Then I read it 5 more times, trying to make the words mean something different than what they obviously meant. I didn't call him back. Not for an hour. Not for 3 hours. I just sat there, staring at my foundation's budget, $3 million I'd fought for. Programs that mattered, women whose lives we'd actually changed. And thought about a man who decided that duty was more important than me. "He's in Kamara," Chisom said. His voice was young, urgent, the voice of someone who hadn't learned to hide what he felt. National Medical Center. The cancer's stage 4. He has maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks. A man I hadn't seen in 8 years was disappearing in real time. And I was supposed to what? Fly across the world. Pretend that the past 8 years hadn't happened. Pretend that I'd built an empire, successful, ambitious, alone, to prove I didn't need him. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "He's been asking about you for months, before the diagnosis, even. He wanted me to find you," and Chisom paused. The hesitation was painful. "He wanted you to know he's sorry, that in another life, he would have chosen differently." I closed my eyes. "Will you come?" he asked. "Before he..." "I have a foundation to run," I said. "I have board meetings, donors, commitments." Alexandra, just my name, just that. But it cracked something in me. "If he wants to apologize," I said, "tell him I don't need it. Tell him that I moved on. Tell him that I'm fine." I hung up before he could respond. Then I sat in my office and knew with absolute certainty that I was going to Kamara. Kamara looked exactly the same. The same sprawling chaos. The same mix of colonial architecture and steel frame development. The same light at 5 p.m. that made everything look like it was burning. I'd spent 3 years here. I'd fallen in love here. I'd had my heart demolished here. Now, I was walking through a hospital corridor with Chisom Okonkwo, trying not to remember the last time I'd seen his father's face. "He's been asking for you since he fell ill," Chisholm said quietly. Not constantly, but enough that I knew I had to try. Even if you said no, you would have let me say no. I would have respected it, he said, but I would have tried anyway. That was honest. I appreciated that. Quame's room was sterile white, machines beeping steadily, the smell of antiseptic trying, and failing to cover the smell of a body shutting down. He looked smaller, diminished, like death. I stood in the doorway, and every instinct I'd spent 8 years building, every wall, every defense, every reason I'd never let myself think about him for more than 5 seconds, screamed at me to turn around. But his eyes opened, and he saw me. For a moment, he looked like the man I'd known, the man who'd told me I could matter, the man I'd loved so much that losing him had felt like losing myself. Then he looked like what he actually was, a dying man who'd made a choice and spent 8 years regretting it. I chose wrong, he said. His voice was paper thin. Don't. I didn't take his hand. I sat in the chair, and I kept my distance. Don't spend what time you have left apologizing. Then what should I do? Die, I said. Rest. Stop trying to rewrite the past. He closed his eyes. I thought he'd sleep, but he kept talking. When you left, I told myself it was better, that you'd build something without me, that you'd be happier, stronger, more yourself. He opened his eyes again. I was right, and that was the cruelest thing I could have discovered. I didn't say anything. You became magnificent, he said. The Bennett Foundation. Women's education across West Africa. You changed the world, Alexandra. And I spent 8 years knowing I'd lost you to something I could never be part of. You chose to lose me, I said. I chose my family, he said, which is the same thing. The machines beeped. The light faded outside. Somewhere in the hospital, people were being born, and people were being saved, and people were dying. And I was sitting in a room with a man who destroyed me once, and was trying to do it again with apologies I didn't need. My son, Quame said. Chisholm, he's a good man. He has choices you and I didn't have. He's not bound by the same, he coughed, struggled. He can choose differently. What are you asking me to do? Show him it's possible, Quame said, to have both. The work you love and the life you want. Show him that you don't have to sacrifice everything for duty. I sacrificed everything, I said quietly. I just sacrificed it to myself instead of to someone else. He didn't have an answer for that. Quame died on a Tuesday morning. I was asleep in the chair when it happened. The machines stopped first, that series of final beeps that means something has ended. Then Chisholm was there, his hand on my shoulder, his voice careful. He's gone, he said. I opened my eyes to watch the man who'd broken me take his last breath without me watching. And I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The past was finally over. He was finally at peace. I could finally stop wondering what would have happened if he'd chosen me. Except I couldn't. Because Chisholm was still standing there, and he looked at me like I was the most important person in the room. And I realized that now the real complicated part was beginning. The funeral was massive. 3 days of ceremonies, thousands of people, the full weight of the Okonkwo legacy on display. I stayed in the back. I wore black. I tried very hard to be invisible. Then Chisholm's grandmother found me. She was 86, formidable, the kind of woman who'd probably eaten smaller people for breakfast. She studied me like I was a problem that needed solving. "You're the one my late husband made my son give up," she said without preamble. "I'm very sorry for your loss," I said carefully. "Don't be." She glanced around the crowded room, then back to me. "Quaim spent 30 years with a wife he didn't love because his father forced the choice. Do you know what that does to a man?" I didn't answer. "It hollows him out," she said. "Turns him into a ghost who moves through life but doesn't actually live it." My grandson watched that happen. You know what he told me? She stepped closer. "He told me he wants to choose differently." "Your grandson doesn't know me." "No," she agreed. "But he knows what his father lost by not fighting for you, and he's young enough and angry enough to do something about it." Before I could respond, she walked away, leaving me with the distinct feeling that I'd just been assessed and approved by someone far more dangerous than I'd realized. Chisholm found me that evening on the hotel veranda. "Don't tell me you're leaving," he said, not quite a question. "I have a foundation to run," I said. "You also have a standing invitation to destroy your life by staying," he said. "But if you're going to leave, do it now. Don't string this out." His directness caught me off guard. Most people, most men especially, would have been gentler, would have framed this as an opportunity. Chisholm was just calling it what it was. My father made his choices," Chisholm interrupted. "He was a good man and a good businessman, and he was also a coward who couldn't stand up to his own father. I'm not interested in repeating that." He paused. "But I'm also not going to beg." I left 3 days later. Back in New York, I threw myself into work with the desperation of someone trying to outrun her own thoughts. New grant applications, a board meeting that ran for 12 hours, plans for a 6th training center. I kept moving, kept building, kept refusing to let myself think about Quaim or Chisholm, or the way Chisholm's grandmother had looked at me like she knew something I didn't want to know about myself. 2 months later, my board chair called an emergency meeting. "We have a problem," she said. She was pulling up a document on her laptop. "One of our major donors just withdrew his commitment. $500,000. He said the foundation is being seen as too political in West Africa. There's pressure from some business interests who don't like our women's education focus." My stomach dropped. 500,000 was our new training center. It was salaries for 6 people. It was the programs for the next year. "I'm not doing anything," he said, "but my family is. My uncles, specifically. They're not happy that I stepped back from the business. They're looking for leverage. They found it. Then make them stop." "I could," he said, "if you gave me a reason to. I'm not going to let you hold my foundation hostage." "I'm not holding it hostage," he interrupted. "I'm showing you that the life you've built is fragile, that building something alone means having no one to protect it when things get difficult, that maybe you're not as independent as you think you are. I hung up on him. Then I sat in my office and realized he was right, and I hated him for it. 3 weeks later, he came to New York. I didn't know he was coming until he walked into my office unannounced. "That's a security issue," I said, not looking up from my laptop. "Your receptionist called you twice," he said. "You didn't answer." "I was busy. You were avoiding me." He sat down without being invited, which is understandable. "I've basically blackmailed you and your organization. That's objectively terrible." "Then why are you here?" "Because my family pulled the pressure," he said. "As of this morning, our business partners have been released from their conflict of interest. Your donor wants to recommit." I looked up. "Why?" "Because I told my uncles that if they continued, I would go public about the fact that they're using business leverage to punish a women's education organization, that their primary shareholder, me, would divest entirely." He leaned back. "Turns out, causing a public scandal over your corporation's hostility to women's education is bad for the stock price. You threatened to tank your company's value for me." "I threatened to tank my company's value to stop my family from being assholes," he corrected. "The fact that it was for you is separate." He was quiet for a moment. "I could have just donated the money," he continued, "replaced what you lost, been the hero in some fairy tale. But that's not what you need. You don't need to be rescued." He met my eyes. "You need to know that you're not as alone as you've convinced yourself you are." I didn't know what to say. "Come to dinner," he said. "One dinner. If you hate me, I'll leave you alone. But come." I said yes, which was the moment everything changed. We went to a restaurant in Brooklyn, small place, intimate, the kind of spot where you could actually hear each other talk. Chisholm was different away from Kamara, sharper, angrier underneath the politeness. There was a tension in him that suggested he was constantly managing something, constantly making choices about what to let people see. "Tell me about the foundation," he said. "Not the professional version, the real one." So I did. I told him about the first training center, how I'd funded it with my own savings, because I was too proud to ask for help. I told him about the women. I'd worked with the ones who wanted to escape abusive situations, the ones who wanted to start businesses, the ones who just wanted to matter to someone other than the men who controlled their lives. I told him that every time I helped a woman choose herself over duty, I was angry at Quame all over again, and angry at myself for needing that anger to function. "You could have just built the foundation," Chisholm said quietly, "without the revenge energy, without proving anything." "No," I said, "I couldn't. I needed proof that I was right to let him go, that his choice didn't destroy me." "Did it?" he asked. "Prove that." I thought about my life, my successful organization, my financial independence, my complete and utter isolation. "No," I admitted. "It just proved I was good at surviving." He nodded like that was exactly what he'd expected me to say. My father spent 8 years surviving, Chisholm said. After he chose his family over you, he built an empire, made money, became successful. And he was miserable. Because surviving isn't the same as living. I'm not your father, I said. No, he agreed. You're smarter, you're stronger. You actually built something that mattered instead of just managing something that was given to you. But you're making the same mistake he did. You think you have to choose empire or love, duty or yourself, success or vulnerability. Those are real choices, I said. Those are things that actually require sacrifice. Only if you choose the wrong person, Chisholm said. My father chose his family, and his family demanded he sacrifice authenticity. That was a bad trade. But what if he'd chosen someone who wanted him to win? What if the person he loved actually believed his success mattered? As we didn't sleep together for 2 months. We had dinner. We talked. We took walks through New York while he told me about Kamara and his family and the parts of his life he was trying to change. I listened. I started to believe him. I started to want to believe him. The kiss happened on a Tuesday, completely ordinary, in the lobby of my apartment building. He'd walked me home, and he'd looked at me with that intensity that suggested he saw all of me, the ambitious part, and the scared part, and the lonely part. And he'd kissed me like I was the most. 6 months later, the Bennett Foundation announced a major expansion. Chisholm invested $2 million. The Okonkwo Group provided infrastructure and logistics. We opened 3 new training centers in 6 weeks. The board celebrated. The donors celebrated. I celebrated in the way that meant I poured myself into the work and tried not to think about how my success suddenly felt less like proof and more like just success, like something I was building with someone instead of against everyone. We got married a year after Quame died. Small ceremony. New York. Chisholm's grandmother came, and she cried the kind of tears that suggested she'd been waiting for one of her grandsons to get it right. Your father would hate this, she told Chisholm, but she was smiling. He believed in duty. You've chosen love. I'm proud of you. I chose her, Chisholm corrected. 18 months into our marriage, Chisholm brought me a box. It was with his things, he said quietly. I've been carrying it for almost 2 years. Inside was a letter, addressed to me, in Quame's handwriting. I read it sitting on our living room couch, with Chisholm's hand on my shoulder and the New York skyline behind us. And I understood for the first time what Quame had been trying to tell me all along. My dearest Alexandra, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you're reading this, my son found you. I hope he did better than I did. I hope he chose you. I spent 8 years wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave, if I'd said no to my father, if I'd chosen you instead of duty. But the older I got, the more I realized something. If I had chosen you, you might have spent your life making my choices easier. You might have supported my ambitions instead of building your own. You might have been happy, but you wouldn't have been you. Losing you was the most painful thing that ever happened to me. But it wasn't a tragedy. It was how I made sure that you got to become yourself. That's what I'm asking my son to understand. Don't choose love because you're afraid of duty. Choose it because the person you're choosing makes you better. Choose it because she doesn't need you to succeed, but she wants to watch you do it. If Chisholm is reading this with you, and if you're together, then know this. I'm sorry for what I cost you, and I'm grateful for what you became because of it. Be happy, choose freely, and let my son love you the way I couldn't. Always. Quaim, I didn't cry. I sat there and read it 3 times, and I understood that closure isn't the end of pain. It's the moment you realize that pain is just evidence of something that mattered. What are you thinking? Chisholm asked. That Quaim was a good man who made terrible choices, I said, and that you're a better man who made different ones. I had a better example of what not to do, he said, and a woman brave enough to let me try anyway. He kissed me then, and I kissed him back. And finally, I understood. Some loyal